Hello Wonka World. In this video, I'm going to talk to the owner of the Econoline. His name is Justin. And he's going to explain to us the reasoning, all about it. Justin?
So I guess the reasoning would be insanity. So this actually started out as a station wagon, a van, that was from the Omak School District in Omak, Washington. The whole project idea started when I saw an old YouTube video that was placed online. It was a commercial from Chevrolet, all right? And you would think, well, this is a Ford. Why am I talking about a Chevrolet commercial? Well, it was actually a giant Chevrolet commercial dissing the Ford Econoline. They compared the Econoline to the old Corvan from the 60s. And every time they would show the Corvan outperforming the Econoline, and I'm a Ford guy, so that's kind of where I started getting interested in the Econoline vans. One of the big things that they did that I thought was just absolutely crazy is a stoppie using the Econoline van. They were driving it down a road at about 35 miles an hour, jammed on the brakes. The rear end comes up off the ground, front hits the ground, back comes back down, the doors all pop open, and so.
I remember you showing me that video.
Yep. So interestingly, Ford actually had a recall on those to fix that problem. They put a 250-pound steel weight above the fuel tank in the back to actually weight the back of the vehicle down to keep that from happening. But I started with drawings, and I was doodling and drew things out, and the old man said, yeah, we can build that. And so I wanted to have something that would actually haul my motorcycle, all right? And they did make, back in the 60s, they made a pickup truck version. But I wanted 4 doors. And I wanted 4 doors not because I want to haul people around with me, but because I have 2 labs, and my wife wants to take them everywhere with us. So we started out with the van. We cut it off here, cut the entire back of it off, and then started grafting in doors. After we got the doors grafted in, I was jacking up the front of the van, and the entire body would flex and twist in the middle. And I was like, okay, because these are actually unibody. And with that, I was like, well, that's definitely not going to work, because if we stretch it, it's just going to be unsafe. Right. So, of course, being a YouTube fan, I watched a lot of videos, a lot of car videos, and everybody was taking the Crown Vic frames, and they were doing F-150 body swaps and everything else. Well, that wouldn't really work for this, and the reason why it really wouldn't work for it is because the engine sits so far forward in the Crown Victoria. In order to get the system to work, we had to actually move the engine back, all right? We wanted to get the engine more centered, which would actually improve the stability of the vehicle, right? Because instead of having all the weight over the front end, it actually moves it to more of a mid-engine. So we cut the 2008 Crown Victoria frame in front of the transmission mount, stretched it 14.5 inches, which pushed the engine back, so now instead of the engine being centered over the front axles, it's actually clear back here. That will actually allow us to put a bench seat in the front, so 3 across in the front, and then 1 on either side in the back, straddling the engine. That gave us the length we needed to stretch the bed. So we actually have a 7-foot bed. With the tailgate down, it'll give us about 9 feet of bed space. And I know it looks like a train, how long it is, but you have to realize that there's no hood. So normally your cab would be sitting clear back here. So it's actually about 1.5 feet shorter than your Dodge truck. So looks very long, not nearly as long as you would think. But, you know, it will have four-wheel disc brakes. We have the 4.6-liter V8 with the 4R70W transmission. The entire drivetrain is staying stock Crown Victoria. So we're going to use stock suspension. We're using stock engine, stock transmission. Because we left the driveline location and the rear differential location in the exact same places, we can use the stock driveline. So, you know, if anything happens while you're cruising down the road, all you got to do is go in and get parts for a 2008 Crown Victoria, whether it's a coil or a U-joint or anything else.
Which a lot of people use as frame swaps.
Yeah.
A lot of people use those.
Oh, and they're pretty much indestructible. I mean, you know, the police used them for years, and they would just beat on them. As a matter of fact, the engine, transmission, and frame from under here was actually a Washington State Patrol vehicle that became an orange taxi and is now going to live the rest of its life underneath a 67 van. So, yeah. The process actually started out when doing it was me working on it myself with the old man directing, right? I would ask questions, he would say, oh yeah, I would do this over here, I would do that over there. And, you know, it moved right along. By putting it on this frame, we actually dropped the height of the vehicle. Doesn't look like it now, but we dropped the height of the vehicle by 12.5 inches, right? Of course, it's sitting on jack stands over a foot off the ground. So the actual height is clear down here versus the stock van that's actually would be about this height. Originally, with the suspension, we were talking about just going air ride in the back so that when the vehicle's sitting level, we can just drop the air suspension down with the tailgate open and to make a ramp to actually be able to just ride a motorcycle in the back. That may or may not work based on the wheelbase and everything on the vehicle. Fortunately, they do make shockwave air suspension stock for the front. So we were thinking that if we actually put air springs in the front and in the rear, we could drop the suspension in the back to drop the tailgate down and raise the front up with the air suspension to give it more of an angle so that we can build a load motorcycles easily in the back. My motorcycle is actually, you know, very long and very low, so it's not like a stock Harley. It's not easy to load into a truck whatsoever. Not that I actually like ever having it in a truck. As a matter of fact, this is the second time coming to here today, or yesterday. It's the second time I've ever towed my motorcycle. So, originally, of course, you and I were going to be going on a motorcycle ride this week, and the coronavirus kind of stopped that from happening. So, it's you know, it is what it is. Fortunately, though, I have been quarantined for more than 14 days. So I was quarantined for 15 days before I went to retrieve my motorcycle. So I'm good. I don't have to worry about carrying it to anybody. So,
Yeah, affecting the whole world.
that it does. It'd be interesting to show how the steering works on this, because you know the original steering on these things was actually a steering gearbox and with a pitman arm, drag link, and everything else. But right now, this actually has rack and pinion steering that is very unique. It was an interesting way of doing it.
Can we get to it?
We can look underneath of it, yeah, and grab a light.
Is that tape on the steering column?
Yeah, it's taped on the steering column because it's chrome.
Okay.
Keep it from getting scratched. So the steering column, of course, the stock one, it's not even close to this. We do have, it is an automatic transmission steering column shift, all right? And built a nice big plate down here at the base to go through, and we actually built a clamp into that clamps underneath. So this just screws in place. Built this nice drop bracket here to support the column, leaving the original gauge cluster in here. But if you actually think about it, steering column's clear up here. The axle is 30 inches behind where the steering column comes through the floor. Okay. So how do you get the steering input to go all the way back to the steering gear, the rack. That was an interesting challenge that was actually fixed by Volkswagen.
Awesome. Okay.
So this unit right here is actually a Volkswagen Vanagon bevel box. All right. Input shaft from the steering column comes into the top of the bevel box, and it reverses the input and pushes it directly out back. All right. The problem with that is it actually reverses the direction you're turning. All right.
So if you turn your wheel left, the car wants to go right.
Exactly. So what we actually did was we ran back with double D shaft and universal joints, came to here, all right, and then took the steering gear, which has the input shaft that would normally be pointed toward the back, flipped it forward in belt brackets so that the input shaft is coming to the front, all right? So this is still a stock steering gear for the Crown Victoria, all right? But the input shaft is coming in from the wrong direction. So left is right, right is left. Because of the bevel box, it means left is left and right is right. It was an interesting way of getting it to actually work, but it works quite well. And it leaves you with actual rack and pinion suspension in a 1960s van. So, yeah, it's working quite well. So.
Well, I know it steered perfectly when I helped push it in here.
Yep. So, and if you look straight back, you can see how far back that V8 engine actually sits, which will definitely move the center of gravity way back on this van.
That's at least 5 feet from here.
Yep.
So I'm at the front bumper.
Interestingly, we've been trying to figure out our cooling system, and so we've measured the original grill space. The grill would sit here, and the radiator on these actually set about 2.5 feet back from the grill. Well, we're going to actually mount the radiator up here in the front, and we're going to use a Jeep radiator. A stock Jeep radiator will actually fit into this opening. So that will be for a, oh geez. You know a lot more about the Jeeps than I do. Your old Jeep, the one that you sold, the black one?
The 86 Cherokee Laredo?
Yes. Same radiator will fit into that location from the old Jeep. So it's the right height and width, and it'll actually sit just this side of that steering box and come clear to the edge. So we can use the Jeep radiator and the Jeep air conditioning condenser will fit into that location. So
cool.
Yeah. So definitely a toy, and I'm really glad that the old man has time to work on it. He actually, over the last couple of weeks, he put this panel in. All right, continue the body line down. This was already built in. And he started playing with the flare on the rear end. We have a set of repop panels so that we can continue the body line from there up and over. We just have to flare this out so it'll actually cover the track width, the new track width. The bed itself, you know, every time you put something in a pickup truck, you look for places to tie things down. You never have enough places to tie things down. Came up with an interesting solution for that. The upper rail here on the bed, all the way around, has hook spots all the way around the bed, all the way around the front and back. And this is actually originally steel track for hanging lights in industrial buildings. We curved the front edges of them to continue the wraparound. We're going to curve the edges around the back as well, so that you will actually have tie points all the way around the bed of the truck.
That's pretty clever.
Yeah, it's just a way of getting extra places to tie things down. So, right now you can see the bump ups for the rear differential travel. All right, and you can see that they come up above the bed rail. Unfortunately, right now the differential comes up and hits the center of the bed because the floor is too low. Well, in order to combat this, we're actually going to cut the entire floor out once we have the sides of the bed done, and we're going to raise the floor level by 3 inches. We'll actually put the floor level up here versus where it's at. Right? It's going to make the depth of the bed shallower, but it's actually going to give us more room underneath the bed for the fuel tanks. So, trying to keep the weight as centered as possible, the fuel tanks will actually be in front of the rear axle versus behind the rear axle.
How big of a fuel tank are you going to go with?
I want to go with saddle tanks. I want 2 of them, and I want them at least 20 gallons apiece. So I'm figuring at least 40 gallons worth of fuel on board. Yeah, I know your Jeep has a single 40-gallon fuel tank back there. But in order to go distance, to actually be able to travel, definitely need plenty of fuel. So, for the fuel tanks, we actually are intending on making the fuel filler necks come up through this upper corner, clear up here. Our fuel fillers are actually going to come out through right here. So this is where we're going to fuel left and right tanks, all right? And then we'll have the fuel hose coming down through the middle, and then our tanks will actually be mounted right behind this panel here, both sides left and right. So, and that of course is to keep the fuel as well as the engine, transmission, and everything else between the front and rear axles, right? Just to help with stability. Because obviously these things were never stable from the factory, but this one is going to be, a daily driver.
Where was the original fuel tank?
The original fuel tank actually set behind the axle, clear back here. And if you come back here, I can show you where the bolt holes are for that recall that I'd mentioned. So if you look back here, you can actually see these square holes right here. And this is where the original weight was mounted above the rear fuel tank. The fuel tank set here. The fuel filler was right behind this box over here is where the fuel door is. All right, it's actually just an outside cap, not a door. But then, so the fuel came down through the top, the weight set above the fuel tank, and the fuel tank hung down below like a Mustang. So I know we have the original plate that was mounted back here somewhere in the shop. The old man uses it for beating. It's just a giant cast.
I think we attached that to a railroad tie and dragged it down the driveway a little bit, so it's probably out by the
Oh,
Jeeps.
you want to see it?
That it?
That is. So that giant chunk of cast iron was what was actually mounted above the fuel tank by Ford in order to combat the issue with the front end dropping and doing a stoppie. So that was the recall piece in '62, and then from '63 on, all of them were built with just an extra chunk of steel sitting in the back. So, yeah, whole bunch of extra weight. So, and then you've got all your projects out here in the rain. So.
Yeah, they're a bit rusty now. I don't think a little bit more rust is going to hurt them before we get to them.
Not so much.
But this quad cab pickup is going to be almost as cool as yours.
I don't know. I think it might be just as cool. I mean, how many crew cab 60s Willys trucks are there?
There's a few. They actually,
Yeah, I saw
can
those
look 'em.
pictures, but this will actually have 4 full-size doors.
yeah.
The next step, as far as the van goes, is to actually work on the rear doors. All right. Clearly, the rear doors right now, you can tell that they are front doors that have just been moved back. We don't need an extra tire well, so we're going to square off the rear doors. All right. This is actually one of the barn doors from the back of the van. All right. And this gets our body line correct. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually split this panel in half and use the square rear corner to square off the back of this door. So it will actually be like this in order to square off the rear door. In order to fix the curve in from the original front door, we have to bring that out in order to straighten the line up down the side of the van.
And that curve was to go with the contour by the headlights.
Correct. Yeah, this curve, the way it goes in like this, the whole front of the van actually curves in at an angle like this, all right? And that's part of the doors curving at that angle, right? Well, we don't want to have a curve in the middle and then go back out and a curve in again. We want to straighten this body line so that it's straight from here all the way up to the rear wheel.
This is at least, what, 2.5 inches?
It's about 2.5 inches, yeah.
Too big.
So what it is this lower hinge will actually be at the end point of the body. So we'll use the front half of this panel to actually straighten up this line here at the front. All right? For down here at the base, we actually have an additional panel from back here that we'll actually use to continue this squared body line here and run it all the way up to here, and then the wheel arch to go over. So, and of course, this will all be filled in. I haven't made up my mind 100% yet, but up here on some of the vans in this triangular portion, some of the vans, the multi-windowed vans, actually have a reverse triangular window like this. And I think that in order to make it easier to see, to get rid of that blind spot, it would be nice to add that window into here.
Or one of those bubble fishbowl hippie van windows.
Yeah, you know, I think ultimately the end goal design of having this all done and everything else is to kind of make it appear to be something that may have been a concept vehicle back at the end of the 60s.
Right.
All right. You know, the Econoline van was the economy line of vehicles. All right. That's why it's Econoline. These were meant to be worker vehicles, right? They're never meant to be, you know, high class. You know, it's not like it's the new King Ranch F350 that's, you know, so far out of everybody's price range that, you know, these were back in the 60s. This was the economy line of vehicles, and it was meant to be a worker's vehicle. And so, you know, I'm not. Just like with your Willys, not building show vehicles here, right? This is something that I want to be able to throw my wife and my dogs in and go.
You might like this place or in instead of drawer.
Yeah, it might be an idea. I do open the door for it all the time. So. But you know, it's something that we want to be able to actually get on the road and drive, right? It's not. I mean, don't get me wrong. It'd be nice to go to a show or two and let other people see what's been built, but you know, we're not doing this to please other people. It's because this is the vision in my head. So,
Right.
you know, the reason why the old man is working on it right now isn't because I don't have the ability to work on it. You know, like I said, I mean, all the welds, all of this, I've done all of this myself so far. The old man didn't start until he started doing this panel here. The issue is that I just don't have time right now. I'm in PA school, even though I'm on hold right now for the coronavirus. But you know, being in medical school, I don't have the time to actually work on this. So, but it's nice to have somebody that's retired that you know, can do it for me.
Must be nice.
You have
Oh,
somebody.
wait.
Yeah. Don't you have somebody retired working on something else? So one other thing that's been started is actually the rear window. And we actually continued this body line around. All right. This is the original body line here, right up here at the top. All right. That matches the top of the vehicle. So this is going to be the rear window frame. It'll be a nice big rear window. I also want the rear window to roll down.
Are you going to have the glass custom made?
Glass is all going to have to be custom made. Glass will have to be custom made for the side doors because I want to get rid of the wing windows. Glass is going to have to be custom made for the back. All right. Nice thing is this being old enough, everything is flat glass. So as long as I can find somebody that'll cut flat glass, you know, we do want safety glass in the vehicle.
Right.
So yeah, this is actually 2 of the rear barn doors that were, the tops were cut off, continued the upper and lower body lines, all right, and we added lengthening pieces to stretch in the middle, all right, and of course this is going to be the rear section, that, and that will mount inside there in order to mount the rear window. So, yeah, and the rear windows will actually be the same. The rear window will be the same height as the side windows. So, but as long as we have safety glass cut, it'll be great. So, I'd love to find a set of the original side mirrors for these. Not the big. They had a couple of different styles. One of them was the big mirror that came up, but then they had a smaller mirror that mounted right here. They called them California mirrors, which were just little round mirrors. It'd be nice to find something like that, but if nothing else, I will find something aftermarket or something old that I like. I like the old Opel GT mirrors. They look similar to like a Mustang bullet mirror, but they're nice. So, but yeah, every project takes time. Anybody that watches the drive videos and everything else that show them doing these vehicles in a week, right? They have unlimited budgets and they have 800 people working on them. It's not real life. Though if Chip Foose wants to do this for me, I would be more than willing to let him drag it off and finish it. So. Either that or Kendig. Kendig Designs would be, actually they might be my first choice. So, yeah. Other than that, if you have any questions or anything, I'm more than willing to answer. I mean, like a 2016 Jeep front end on this truck.
Oh. Because I have 4 of these.
Okay. I just think it'd be interesting.
Originally, when I was looking at getting a brand new Jeep,
Yeah.
I was looking at getting one of these grills to put on it.